of national unity. Now, this historic accord, once unthinkable, has allowed President Cyril Ramaphosa to secure a second term in office. To gain deeper insight into the implications of this political configuration as well as South Africa's new developments, we are now joined by renowned political analyst Dr. Rama Naidu. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the Daily Roundup. Dr. Naidu.
Good evening. Good to be here.
All right. Firstly, just perhaps give us your reaction on these new developments.
I think largely positive. It's been a watershed moment in South Africa, heralding a completely different era of politics and the end of majority rule as we know it for the last 30 years. So it brings in a lot of uncertainty but cautious optimism, as the people have spoken and decided very clearly not to give power to the ANC to rule as the single majority party. And this, I think, brings in an era where political ideology has to get to the back, and all parties that are part of the government of national unity to show maturity in terms of putting the country first and not about scoring points. And I think this changes the whole political landscape of South Africa, and apart from the optimism and the voices of the people and the big task ahead for this government of national unity, there's a general sense that this is what's needed in the country at the moment, and we think that there is a will to make this happen, and we trust that it will bring in a lot more voices into the space as we create this and build into this new area of work.
All right. Now, what would you say is the significance of this agreement between the ANC as well as DA? Will they be able to work together in the new government of national unity? And what does the shift represent for South African politics?
I think they have to work. And, you know, we asked the question about that the parties are actually quite different. But in reality, the ANC had been moving towards the center left for quite some time. And the DA, despite being, touted as a white party, has significant black support. So maybe they're not as far apart as we think that they are. And the one thing that they do have in common is the respect for the Constitution. And that's an important part of the work. And I think the sense is that because of the dire straits that the country finds itself in, both parties realize that there's serious work that needs to happen. And Cyril Ramaphosa has been a negotiator in the past and done amazing work even with CODESA. And so the feeling again is that they have to come up with a mechanism that not only works for them, but also keeps what's happening in this new government transparent to civil society, so that ordinary people begin to gain confidence in this democracy again. And that, of course, would have a whole lot of positive spin-offs for the country, for the economy, and for the future, and even for the region.
Right. Perhaps just take us through the details of this new agreement and cooperation between these two parties, and how it will actually impact the political landscape of South Africa as a whole.
We don't have the details of the actual agreement yet in terms of, but in the intellectual spaces where it's being discussed, the idea is that they have to focus on certain fundamental things first, where there are no disagreements, and that would be things such as jobs, ending corruption, and the question of the mediation in terms of conflict between the parties. The results have spoken for themselves. It seems like the DA would be ruling in the Western Cape and in Gauteng. So there's a division of power. It also means, quite interestingly, that as it brings in the era of a multi-party coalition kind of government, there'd also be room to look at the present system of democracy in South Africa and whether it would require constitutional changes to embed a different system of governance and democracy in the country that embraces and talks to the notion of cooperative rather than competitive government. So the verdict is out. It still remains to be seen what happens in terms of the future. But both these parties have an amazing experience at negotiation. The goodwill is there. The faith is there. We feel strongly that it will work, and it's the best thing for the country at this moment.
Right. Now, talking about the future, how does the re-election of President Cyril Ramaphosa actually reflect the changing dynamics within the ANC as well as the relationship with the opposition?
That's an interesting question. I think the re-election of Cyril Ramaphosa as the president has cast the die in terms of what this ANC looks like at the moment. And the reality is that with the emergence of MK, a large part of the voting population that would have voted for the ANC voted for MK. And MK's its selling point was about we are the original ANC. So I think a new trend is emerging, a new possibility is emerging of a party that might not be just the ANC. Maybe it's a completely new configuration of a center-left party. You know, as is the case in most mature democracies, two big parties, left and right. And we seem to think that in this country, Ramaphosa's re-election is pointing in that direction. And I think a lot of things are open in terms of how this plays out. And we're hoping that there's significant space for intellectual voices and civil society to come back and to guide and work with this government to do the best things for this country. So I think Cyril Ramaphosa is a vote of confidence in the coalition, in this unity movement, and it can only be good for the country.
All right. Now, Dr. Naidu, perhaps just talk to us about the key policy areas where you expect the ANC as well as DA to actually collaborate in the new government. How might this impact, that is, the country's economic and social policies?
I think we've already seen a rise in voter confidence in foreign investment in South Africa once the announcement of national unity, government of national unity was announced. So that's a good sign. And that was a concern in the country that had it gone the other way and the ANC joined up with the EFF and MK, that would have gone back to the old idea of the strong left movement represented by MK. And so I think they will focus fundamentally on getting this economy to work again. That would be a priority. The second is to focus on jobs and the levels of poverty, and then to work on corruption. Corruption has been endemic in this country, and people will want to see positive action in terms of corruption, so that the money that we pay, the taxes that we pay, that people begin to feel that this government can work. And if it does work, it brings in a completely new era of politics. So the ANC might lose some of its identity, as well as the DA, as they enter the space. But it's basically about jobs, employment, corruption. And I think one of the big issues would be the national health scheme that's been signed into power by the president and now has to get wings, so it's actually established. I think those three areas. And possibly a fourth area would be related to the government in the provinces and how that would play out in terms of the three levels of government in South Africa.
All right. Now, given South Africa's history of racial divisions, how significant is it that these two parties actually representing different constituencies have come together? And what does it actually say about the evolution of the country's politics post-apartheid?
I think that, we've been kind of embedded in the old way of thinking that it's a black-white conflict and the old apartheid story, which is there and it's real. But in the last 30 years, there has been significant movement in this country. For example, the DA class as a white party, less than 4% of the population, still got more than 20% of the vote. So there's a large part of the black population who voted for DA. And the same thing with the ANC. So that movement simply means that there'll be a complete realignment. And for civil society, this is a space where we can start to step in and again get our voices into the notion of governance through transparency. So I think the jury is still out on what this happens, and a lot will, in terms of getting this government of national unity to work, is going to be a key factor for this this government, so that people begin to get confidence in the country and then start to tackle the work. Of course, you also know that for many governments, 5 years is a short period of time to start doing serious changes to the paradigm and the model. But we are hoping that they are brave enough and have the courage to do what needs to get done to get this country back on its feet.
Right now, Dr. Naidu, is there perhaps anything else that you'd like to add before we let you go?
Just thank you for the opportunity. And I think that what's happened in South Africa has serious implications for the region, for Africa. And let's hope and pray that this yields the results that we all expect from this government of national unity. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Naidu. Now, that was renowned political analyst Dr. Rama Naidu giving us his insight on South Africa's new political development. To stay tuned, that is for tomorrow's weather focus as well as local news roundup.